Hello, my name's Corey Gibson. I'm currently Head of Subject in Scottish Literature here at the University of Glasgow, and I'm here to invite you to come and join us to study Scottish Literature here at Glasgow. But first, a wee bit of ground clearing. You will certainly, I imagine, have studied some Scottish literature before, a Scottish text or something set in this place, but you might not have encountered a discrete academic discipline or subject area called Scottish literature, particularly. So let me explain what that means. Now, the way I like to think of it is that if literary studies is the study of the ways in which our species imagines itself through language, and English literary studies is the study of the ways in which our species imagines itself through the English language or variations of it, Anglophone literatures, then Scottish does a slightly different work than the word English in English literature. Scottish literary studies is the study of the ways in which our species imagines itself through language, in, through, or otherwise associated with this particular wee corner of the world that, for the moment and for at least several hundred years, has been called Scotland. Okay, so far so good. Seems like a lot of caveats there, right? But I want to reassure you that our focus on Scottish literature is not constraining, okay? You're not going to be limited to those big, iconic archetypes of Scottish cultural life. The claymore, the castle, the heathery bray, the tartan plaid, heart disease, all those types of things. There is nothing, I want to make the claim today, that sits outside of the Scottish literary imagination. So, to give you a couple of examples, we might draw on um, the late great science fiction writer Ian M. Banks, who, a Scottish writer, wrote A History of the Universe in 3 chapters. You ready? Chapter 1. Bang. Chapter 2. Chapter 3. Crunch. The end. So there you go. Nothing that's ever happened or ever will happen in the universe sits outside of this one tiny little artifact of Scottish literary history. One more example. A great Glaswegian writer, Alan Spence, from a really interesting poetry collection called Glasgow Zen. Okay, so we're going to move from the sort of cosmological to the metaphysical now. This is a poem called On the Oneness of Self and the Universe. Okay, you ready? On the oneness of self and the universe. It's all one to me. That's it. That's the whole poem. So there you go. There's nothing outside of the scope of Scottish literature. So why study Scottish literature and why study it here with us? The subject itself is wild and various, inspired by the people and the landscape you'd be immersed in here at Glasgow. So, if you're all going to be readers, otherwise you wouldn't be watching this. But, if you visit a place or go on your holidays and you like to read something creative and imaginative that's set in that place so that you can be sitting by a big bridge, a famous bridge, and you're reading a story, and there's that bridge in the story. Like, oh my goodness, I'm here imaginatively and I'm here in person. You get to do that every day for 4 years. You study Scottish literature in Scotland, and not just anywhere, but here at Glasgow in particular. Ours is the only such subject area, the only academic unit at any university in the world that is dedicated solely to research and teaching in Scottish literature. So we are unique in that respect. If your interest lies in Scottish literature, this is the place to be. So we have a really high concentration of researchers and scholars and educators in the field here. We're also part of a research centre that is more broadly dedicated to Scottish and Celtic studies, and that represents, again, the highest concentration of researchers in these various fields that overlap under the umbrella of Scottish studies anywhere in the world. Because we have this focus in Scottish literary history, we get to take a kind of long historical view and offer a fully textured and peopled picture of the world from which these texts emerge. So I have colleagues who have expertise in the medieval period, and the full gamut of Scottish literary history is represented right up to the modern period, where myself and a colleague do a lot of the work in 20th and 21st century Scottish literatures, for instance. We are, compared to some other subject areas, a relatively small unit despite the breadth and depth of our research expertise. But that does mean that we really, really get to know our students. Most of my colleagues and I are we're all in this one building, and people come visit us here often. And the students will, when they join us in first year, in the course of the first year program, will be able to put faces to names and get to know virtually everyone on the core team right from the beginning. We also have a really, really precious sense of community in Scottish literature here, not least with our student society, the Scottish Literature Society, which is made up not exclusively, but substantially of our students. And we work really closely with those guys to put on trips. We're not long back from a big reading trip to Arran, and we sometimes put on nice trips to heritage sites. We run a film club with the students and the Student Society, looking at adaptations of Scottish literary works and what have you. So we're quite a close-knit bunch, and it's a very supportive place to come and learn as well. And through things like the Student Society, one of the really nice things we get to offer to incoming students in first year is the opportunity to socialise with and become pally with people who are a little bit further ahead on their journey through the undergraduate program, such that you have a student's perspective and sort of peer support in terms of folk who've just come through the course that you're now embarking upon. Okay. So to give you a wee breakdown of how our degree program works, I figured we could spend a wee bit more time maybe on pre-honours. That's the first 2 years of your 4-year degree. So in first year, we have a wee look at the most recent kind of 250 years of Scottish literary history. Through two courses. The first one that begins in September in your first year is called The Fantastic and the Real, and it is dedicated particularly to ideas of genre and the speculative imagination. So we're really concerned with how fantastical genres and literary experimentation bump up against and offer us another way of tackling kind of hard-nosed, grim realities. And in the second semester, where our course is called Stories We Tell Ourselves, and there we're more concerned with kind of history and myth, the reassuring stories that we might tell ourselves as individuals, as families, as faith groups, as villages, towns, cities, communities, nations, species, even, and how writers have an important place in shoring up those comforting stories and in debunking them and puncturing them. So, for instance, there's to give a few examples of the kinds of thing we look at in first year. The chronology is broken. We don't go from the earliest times to the latest in first year. We leap around across poetry, drama, prose, fiction and non-fiction, short stories, folk tales, all sorts of things in the course of your first year. You might be flying off to Never Never Land with Tinkerbell one week, and then in a 1930s girls' school in Edinburgh with Jean Brodie the next week, and then at the Jacobite rebellion of the mid 17th century with Walter Scott the next week. And then in a shooting gallery in Leith in the 1980s with Irvine Welsh the next week. We like to mix it up and do a wee bit of time travel as we go through. In level two, we go back to the start and we get to the origins and earliest periods of medieval Scottish literature, beginning around the end of the 14th century and go right the way up to the 18th century and to Robert Burns. So in the course of first and second year, you get a taste, get a wee flavour of 5 centuries of Scottish literary history. Some highlights in the level 2 programme are the medieval Makars, the makers as in poets, and saw it as a kind of craft, and their flyting tradition, which is a kind of medieval rap battle where poets would say terrible things about one another's mothers in very creative ways and be rewarded for it. But also the history of the ballad tradition in Scotland, the emergence of the novel and the play in Scottish literary history. Loads of riches to choose from. And after those kinds of survey courses of first and second year, third and fourth year, the honours options, that's where you really dig into a particular historical period or a particular genre or a particular motif or technique or a literary mode or register. So here's a few examples of the kinds of things we have in this list of courses here. Just to point to a couple of unusual and quite unique kind of examples is our textual editing course. So if you have any interest in sort of publishing in that kind of area, this is a really good course to go into. Lots of my colleagues are really, really renowned and important figures in terms of textual editing and literary history. And so that gives you sort of hands-on experience with those kinds of processes. Another really popular course we have is called Memorialising Scottish Culture. And as part of that course, you have a kind of internship or placement with a heritage site, an archive, special collections, a library, a museum, a site like that. And then you write up a report of your work with those colleagues in other sectors. So if that's the kind of area of work you might be interested in, then this is also a great program for you. Okay. Sorry to be so abrupt about it, but my name again is Corey Gibson. I'm currently head of subject in Scottish literature. If you'd like to write to me, my email address is there, and there's a little more information there available for you to look up at your leisure. Come on, join us. It's lovely. Cheers now. Thank you.